A major component of requirements management is going to be the change management. There are various reasons for changes, especially when it comes to your requirements. There might be errors or incomplete requirements that have not been identified before, even though we have introduced various measures to prevent that in the previous lectures, but it can still happen. Another reason might be evolution of the context in which the requirements are placed. Those things are sometimes or often out of your hands, so that just happens. Changes in itself are not really a big thing. The stakeholders may gain new knowledge at later project stages, something that I mentioned before, that while they're working with you on this project, they learn more new things, they better understand your project, and so what they think about their project now might be different from what they thought about their project at the beginning, so requirements and context and knowledge can change. It also proves that the stakeholders are interested and involved in your project if they develop together with you. While changes are not a bad thing, of course it should also not be the norm and happen on a daily basis, that there are changes to the document or change requests happening, because then you don't get work done. So frequent changes are problematic. It makes the development in agreement with all stakeholders very challenging and time consuming, because whenever one stakeholder requests a change, you have to go to all relevant stakeholders, figure that out with them, then go back, and this is time that you cannot work properly on the project. So too many changes are an indicator for bad process quality. Some changes are just normal, so don't worry about them. It is necessary to properly structure and process change requirements, especially in highly complex projects where you have a lot of stakeholders. If it's just 2 people, then of course it's like this, what we're going to propose to you now might be a little bit too big, but at a certain size of a project, there's a certain complexity, you need a proper structured process to do that. It also gives you justifiable decisions if and how requests are approved. So changes may recur to either individual requirements, such as a change, in addition, a removal of a feature, or the requirements document itself, where maybe terminology needs to be updated. Usually, a change control board is responsible for change requests. It evaluates those requests and it makes decisions. It may delegate tasks to another party, for example, drafting of an actual change to the requirements. And the decisions have to be negotiated and agreed upon. So something that we have mentioned many times before, try to get the buy-in from each and every involved stakeholder. Otherwise, someone might be unhappy. So make sure that you go back to the negotiation slides and figure out how you resolve conflicts that might also occur in this change management process. The change control board has a variety of tasks. First, change effort estimation could be performed by a third party, but is often done within the control board. Evaluate the change request, for example, effort-benefit ratio. Does it make sense to change this or not? Define the requirements change and or new requirements. Based on the change request, you figure out what to do. And the changes could be kept to a minimum. Don't change half of the requirements document if it's if you don't have to, or if this is optional, or if you can avoid it. And it decides about acceptance or rejection of the change requests. They also classify incoming changes, for example, based on their criticality, is this a nice to have or something that would be nice and interesting or cool, or is this a zero-day exploit of the new Windows 25 edition that's coming out next week and will impact each and every computer on the planet. So there are differences with respect to priority. And they assign accepted change request. Who is responsible for implementing those changes, which is especially critical or interesting for long-lasting projects where you might already be in the maintenance stage. There are different members in the change control board. The following parties should be represented in the change control board. First, a change manager, then the contractors, architects, developers, configuration manager, customer representative, product manager, project manager, someone from quality assurance, and requirement engineers. Obviously, this is a very long list, so it applies to big and large projects and not to a 2-person project for a single static website. So this is like for big projects. The change manager is a shared person of the change control board. He or she mediates between parties in case of conflicts, communicates and documents the changes, and similar to the role of the requirements engineer, just specifically for the changes. Change requests should contain the following information, like identifier, ID, essentially like everything in computer science has an ID. Unique identification of change request makes it easier to handle different ones, so you know which one you're talking about, even though they might have similar titles. That brings us to the title, which should summarize key concerns of the change request. Then you obviously need a proper description of the exact changes that are requested. A justification, essentially a reason why you want that change. A date when it was filed, and who filed it, and what's the importance of that change. So some information that help you to manage the change request. The following information is helpful for the management of changes, like who is a change validator, the person responsible to verify if a change was performed correctly. The impact analysis status with a flag which indicates whether an impact analysis has been performed, so essentially yes, no, 1, 0. And the change control board decision status. Is it still pending? Has it been rejected, accepted? Where is this right now? And the change request has also a change control board priority. The priority for the change request is assigned by the control board. And it has a responsible person in charge performing the change and a system release, which is the version of the system that implements the change. There are 3 types of change requests: the corrective requirement change, the adaptive requirement change, and the exceptional change, which is also called a hotfix. The corrective requirement change is often a failure in the system, and the reason for failure is an error in the requirements, and the changes fix this error. So pretty simple, pretty normal. The adaptive requirement change represents a system that, or happens when a system needs to be amended. For example, a change in the system context or stakeholder needs, so you have to add something. And the exceptional change or the hotfix is something that must be done immediately at all costs, no matter what it costs, and can be either adaptive or corrective, usually due to some kind of a critical bug. And to handle change requests, a certain process or workflow is often helpful. What we're going to present to you now can work very well in various projects. You can also adapt it to your own needs. So take it as a rough idea for a proper workflow that could be handled. So you start at the top with the impact analysis, where the effort required for the changes is estimated. The affected requirements are determined. Is it just one or multiple? Does it maybe include new requirements? Then you have to also consider the development artifacts that need to be changed afterwards. The effort for artifact changes is usually significantly higher than for requirement changes, because changing a requirement is usually done in the document, but then changing the developed thing may be way more complicated. So maintaining the requirement document is cheap, but still often neglected, but figuring out what to do in the development part takes way more time than also doing it. It can be supported by traceability information, more on traceability in the following lecture. The change evaluation is also happening there. Its costs and benefits are compared to make the change or do not make the change. And you also have to consider the available resources which are required to make the change. Do we even have them? Could be money, could be time, could be people with the corresponding knowledge to make the change. Then afterwards, when the change is either approved or rejected essentially just leads you back to, if a change is rejected, you tell them, look, we considered your change request, but we're not going to continue with that. So that part on the right is quite simple. But let's assume we have a change that is approved. Then you have to prioritize the change requests. How important is it, especially compared to other pending change requests? Then you assign it for a system release where you want to implement it and to a person. And then you're coming back to the end. Change has been implemented. Keep track of this, document everything properly, and you're done.